Welcome everyone to Books and Sip. Grab a drink, a snack, relax, and settle in as we talk books. My name is April and I'll be your host. Be sure to check out my other podcast and YouTube channel called Hope for the Heart. Links will be in the description. So let's get going on today's episode and talk Dragon Kings. And fair warning now that there could be things that could be considered spoilery. While I will try to not give away any key points, it's always different for everybody as far as what they could consider spoilery. So if you haven't read the Dark King series by Donna Grant, or at least through to book 2, then you may want to check this episode out at a later time. Today I'm going to talk about Dark Heat, Darkest Flame, and Fire Rising. I always want to call this series the Dragon King series, since it is about Dragon Kings, but it is called the Dark King series. This series by Donna Grant narrowed down as like fantasy romance set in Scotland with hot, protective Scotsmen and strong, beautiful women. Donna currently has 3 series that are intertwined together but can be read separately. So I will also link in the description the page on our website that has the reading order for all 3 series, so that way if you did want to read them all together, then this will help you out. So the Dark Heat, being the first one we're going to talk about, is a bundle of 4 short stories that are prequels for the series. The first short story is Dark Craving, and that is Hal and Cassie's story. For me, it was a pretty quick read that I got pulled in and wishing to be in Scotland and a part of this world. Cassie is an American that moves to Scotland to start over. I don't know about you, but I have thought for years what it would be like to just move somewhere new and be surrounded by people that don't already know things about me and just basically have a fresh start. So, kind of got a little jealous of Cassie in that aspect. I mean, she did it for her own reasons, but, for me, a place that I always wanted to go is like Ireland and just like live there, or at least go for like a few months and just travel around. It's appealing. I don't know. Now, aside from their love story, we start getting insights into the Dragon King history and just getting a lay of the land and where they've been trying to hide out before all these stories started and just the history of it. In these short stories, you get the sneak peek of the hot and steamy romance scenes that you get in the full-length books. Don't get me wrong, the scenes get steamy, but in my opinions, they would be considered more on the milder side in the short stories. Donna has a way of writing these scenes that can just make you go, yes, please. The second story in the Dark Heat bundle is Night's Awakening, and it's the story of Guy and Elena. I liked how their story kind of arced over the rest of the stories in the bundle. They're both stubborn in different ways. Elena's job is a part of why their story arcs over more than just one story. And it's what put her in the path of the Dragon Kings and plays into the next book. And that third story is Dawn's Desire, and that is a story of Bannon and Jane. And Jane actually works in the same place that Elena does, so that's kind of how she gets pulled in the story. And I like that we got pulled out of Scotland for just a little bit to see the scope of the world and, how it kind of gets affected by what's going on. The fourth story and the final story in this book is Passions Claimed, and it basically finishes the story for Guy and Elena and Bannon and Jane. And there's an element that has been arced over all of the stories that doesn't get wrapped up, and I'm not going to say what that is because I don't want to spoil it, because it's pretty, this part is like the big element, and it's what plays into the rest of the series. Before going on to the first full-length book, I want to take a second and talk about the merch store that I started. Majority of the graphics are ones that are meant to encourage you, and it will be linked below, so be sure to take a look. I currently have a shirt with the Believe in the Good graphic, and then I got my mom the Strong and Beautiful shirt, and I'm trying to decide what I'm going to get next And I'm kind of thinking of the Kindness is Beautiful pillow. I just like the bright yellow rays on it. It just pops. But a portion of the profits will be donated, so you not only get something to encourage you, but you will help to make a difference to somebody else. The first full-length book in the Dark King series is The Darkest Flames. Now I'm going to apologize now if I mispronounce anybody's name, any characters, because that is highly likely. I will try to do what I can to look up how to pronounce things, but I've never been good with names, so there's a really good chance I'm going to screw it up. But in The Darkest Flame, the story is about Kellen and Dany. Now, in this story, you could almost call it a hate-to-love romance. And I say that because we learn that Kellen hates humans as a whole and has been asleep in dragon form for like a millennia or something, I believe. And I like the inner strength that Dany has. She stood up for herself when needed, but she also took to the kings before falling for a king and wanted to do what she could to protect herself and the kings. Because this is a full-length book, the steamy romance scenes are kicked up a few notches. I liked how Donna writes the kings. Khan is the king of kings, or Constantine, or Khan is usually what you hear him referred to in the books. But to me, he has this air of mystery to him, which makes sense since it is early on in the series. But I also like that with each story we get just a bit more of the kings. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of kings, and in the beginning of the series we don't know how many kings there actually are. And I kind of like that they aren't just all dumped on us at one time, and that we're just supposed to keep up with them throughout the rest of the series, and that we're just kind of getting them a few at a time. And I'm sure that as the series goes on, that we'll have to start keeping up with them, but I think it'll be easier then, and that way there's like a little build up. So in this first book we also get more of the Dark Fae and how they come into play with the kings and the Light Fae. And I really, really liked the scenes that we had with everybody interacting, and it was just the perfect thing to keep the flow of the story going. Before I move on to the last book for today's episode, I want to mention that I've got a YouTube channel and I'm planning on uploading this episode to YouTube. So go find Books and Sip and let's talk about today's episode over there. Let me know if you have read this series yet. If you have, how far are you and who is your favorite? Have you read any of Donna Grant's other books? When the Books and Sip YouTube channel hits 500 subscribers, I will start doing one monthly live stream. And when it hits 1,000 subscribers, I will do 2 monthly live streams. Now, the second book in the series and the final book for today is Fire Rising. And this is Tristan and Sammy's story. Tristan is the newest king, and we first meet him in Dark Craving, that was the first short story in Dark Heat. And Tristan and Sammy both have broken past that they have to come to terms with. And I really like their story because they mesh well together so well. Sammy is Jane's half-sister, and that's why Sammy gets in with the kings, because Sammy comes to Jane for help. So I do want to do more episodes with this series, with the Dark King series, and go more in depth with those since they'd be books later in the series. So if you're a fan of romance and fantasy, then I do suggest checking out this series. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a good day. Always remember that you are loved, you are worthy, and you are a masterpiece, and you matter to this world. Be safe.